fill up about 1 minute. So if you're watching the replay, skip ahead 1 minute. If not, it's all good. We're going to get started here again in about 60 seconds. Today, we're going to talk about all the different news that's happened over the past 30 days for the month of September, the tail end of August as well. So before we get started, go ahead and let us know where you're calling in from or where you're watching from. Drop that into the chat, whatever platform you're on. We've got, Instagram running now, Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, Twitch. Just let us know where you're calling in from, what platform you're on, or just, what industry you're in, like part of the industry. Are you a cultivator, a manufacturer, a distributor, a retailer? Are you in an ancillary service? And then where in the world are you calling in from? Are you in the United States? What state? Are you international? We'll go ahead and get started here in about 15 seconds while the room fills up. All right, just pull some notes up here. It's a lot to cover. It's also been a little bit of a slow news month, but it's all good. It's all good. Hey, all right. We've got the Pennsylvania Medical Cannabis Review on Instagram. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. Check them out. All right, so let's just go ahead and get started. Let's hop into today's information here. So before we get started, I need to let you know that the information contained in this presentation is meant for guidance purposes only and not meant as professional, legal, or tax advice. And further, does not give any personalized legal, tax, investment, or any business advice in general. So with that out of the way, let's hop into the agenda for today. So we're going to cover a few things, right? First, we're going to start off with news, emerging trends, things that we're seeing within the industry. And we're talking about licensing regulations, legal updates, tax updates, finance and mergers and acquisitions, and then some other miscellaneous things that just didn't fit into a category that I did want to talk about today. And then we're going to take some questions from the audience. So throughout this presentation, if questions pop up, drop them into your chat. I'll get to those questions maybe right away or maybe after we get through some of these other articles. I want this to be a free-forming kind of conversation between myself and the audience here. So if you need anything related to your cannabis business, any help related to that, finance related, accounting related, tax related, then please reach out to us via our website at greengrowcpas.com or give us a call at 800-674-9050. All right, so with all that administrative stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the news for September for the cannabis industry. So first, licensing and regulation. So we have 6 states that are potentially going to be going legal in some form or fashion through the next election on November 3rd here. So you've got Arizona, about a little over 7 million people there. They're going for recreational cannabis. Their licensing is the only one that's kind of announced that they're going to have a cap of 10% the amount of pharmacies that are in the state. So they have about, I think, 1,400 or 1,500 pharmacies in the state. That means they're going to have about 150 dispensaries available in Arizona. But it does have a social equity component to it, so look into that if that's something you're opening your eyes to. Again, these are just the legalization of these things, or at least opening up the possibility for adult use in Arizona. Now you've got New Jersey, 9 million people. This is the state that most people are excited about just for a multitude of reasons, right? The West Coast has seen a very big, mature industry here. California, Washington, Oregon, Nevada, things of that nature. Midwest markets turning on in Illinois and Michigan. They're hitting their stride. Now, the Northeast and the East Coast, that's going to be the next kind of sleeping giant that's going to wake up here. And that's going to change the landscape starting 2021 going forward. Right? There's 40 million plus residents in the tri-state area of New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. So that gives a very big, dense area for people to actually start their cannabis businesses. Now, you may even start to see a Northeast Cannabis Pact. This has been kind of running around in some inside circles that we've heard that these states are going to start to, once New Jersey falls, more and more states are going to come online and they're going to kind of create an interstate cannabis commerce and other kinds of agreements to make it easy to move cannabis throughout the states, right? The states are very, very small, very easy to transport between each other. Now, it's widely expected to pass here in New Jersey, so keep your eyes on that. Now, next, South Dakota, the third one here. Smaller market, under 1 million people. And, it's going to be a local licensing and cities will be deciding whether they're licensed or not. So, but they have stated within the bill that they are very open to having enough licenses to substantially reduce the illicit market. So that could mean a lot of licenses in South Dakota, but not a lot of big market share there for the amount of patients or the amount of recreational users there. Now, Montana currently is the next state, the fourth one we're going to talk about here. it's currently a medical market, but this market is one that will be a shrinking number of markets. It's going to allow only in-state residents to bring up and make up that industry. Now, what you're going to see is that, with this whole transition in from medical into recreational, there's going to be a new wholesale market, and there's going to be a reduced requirement for vertical integration for dispensaries. Now, if you don't know anything about Montana almost forces essentially these businesses to be vertically integrated. And that's a pretty tough thing. You have to learn 5 businesses all at once. So it's not really the easiest thing to do. So keep an eye out on Montana. We have some presence out there. So if you're in Montana, reach out to us if this does fall for you. Now, Mississippi, the next one, number 5, 3 million people in the state, sizable state, but it's a pretty limited access to medical use only for debilitating illnesses. And there's 2 competing initiatives within the state. One is even more locked down than the other. So, how much is this? Let me step back. This is just one of the southern states that's going to have to be opening up here. And it could be a good spearhead, but it does seem pretty limited. And the last one we're going to talk about here is Vermont. 600,000 people in the state, but it's pretty much being a legislative action where, both both sides of the legislature, the House and the Senate, are trying to push bills forward here. This is not up for a vote for the citizens. This is more of a legislative action here. And Governor Phil Scott has said, hey, they have pretty much remedied a lot of the issues that I was looking at with the last bill. So who knows? He hasn't really said how he wants to vote on this, but it seems like it could be something for the future to look at. Now, it could be a no license cap bill, but it could favor their in-state sales or in-state, citizens for licenses. So we'll see how that shakes out. Now, Nebraska was one that was on the bill. If they're going to have voting, they had 180,000 signatures, but that pretty much got killed by the state Supreme Court, saying that they have a thing out there called the single subject rule for ballot measures. And essentially what happened is that there was 2 questions within one measure. And I think it was it going to be, I forget what it was. I think it was like, should we open up recreational or medical, and do we tax it? You can have to break those questions into their own separate measures. At any rate, Nebraska, you're going to have to wait. Now, another licensing news, Illinois has released out, the qualifying applicants. It's a pretty competitive market, extremely competitive, shall I say, actually, for many reasons. And I don't want to go into those. You can just guess. Chicago's there. There's a lot of stuff in the middle of the country that's turning on. At any rate, 21 qualifying applicants of the 75 new licenses were informed that they beat out 1,667 applications that were graded. Now, 70 of those marijuana dispensary applicants for the recreational cannabis businesses in Illinois, they dropped a lawsuit against the state after the governor allowed the losing bidders, people that did not get, a chance to be in the lottery, to make some corrections and try again. Now, the lawsuit argued that the state's lottery awarded 75 retail licenses using a scoring system that discriminated against some minority applicants. Now, with only 21 applicants qualifying as finalists for the 75 licenses, a program that once had been considered the potential industry blueprint for social equity is kind of falling apart, and it's not the best look for the state right now. And some added complexity to it is the applicants who didn't have a majority military veteran-owned business structure were also scoring fewer points. Now, I'm not 100% sure. I wasn't really detailed into the licensing. I'm not sure if that was explicitly stated in the grading rubric when you go for your licensing application, but that's something to stay aware of. Now, while the state is, the licensees are hopeful that this new opportunity, they can correct their applications, they're not allowed to restructure their business. For example, they can't go and recruit a veteran to, beef up their chances of getting a license. So who knows how this will shake out, but just some lessons to learn from this. Make sure when you're investing in your application, make sure that you're working with an experienced team who knows the insider information. This is an investment. The license is a very, very big piece of it's going to be on your balance sheet. It's a big asset, especially in these limited markets here. So make sure you're investing in this front end, because if you don't get the license, there's no business essentially. So, and also the second lesson here is to know the grading rubric in and out and build your team and your licensing application around the grading rubric. Now, I'm not an expert in Illinois. There are many other people that can speak specifically about the nuances to the Illinois application, which I'm sure have been covered laboriously and deep and in detail by other people. But your grading rubric of the licensing application is incredibly important to know that before you start on the application process at all. Now, another licensing thing, an update on regulations here, adult use in Maine is turning on October 9th. It passed in 2016, so 4 years later, finally this is turning on. It's been a long slog, so hopefully that turns out well. We'll see how it shakes out. Now, next year, you've got 50 marijuana retailers vying for Oxnard permits. So if you don't know what Oxnard is a city. It's an agricultural city in Central California. It's not the largest population, but there are a lot of people that want to be in this central area for a multitude of reasons. It's very centrally located. It's close to Ventura County, or I think it's even in Ventura County, actually, close to LA County. You can get pretty good distribution up and down the 5 there and the 101. At any rate, what you're seeing with this, and I don't want to go too much into detail here, is that there was a lot of competition for this, and that the city is actually looking to kind of make it more of a local-based business licensing regulation setup instead of a social equity base. For example, they want businesses to have 75% of their workforce living and residing in Oxnard. Now, they're also looking at other ordinances of should they allow indoor and outdoor cultivation, which most cities, I think, allow both. Majority of cities should be allowing both, but who knows? This is a very big agricultural city, so it's kind of different to see them deciding between those small details through that. They also just thought about earmarking 2 of the 8 dispensary applications for local ownership and not anybody from LA or any other area. So you may start to see a more grassroots or local based licensing regulation framework going for cities coming forward. As you may know, 2/3 of the cities in the state of California do not allow cannabis licensing. So as these other cities turn on, they may look to, again, make this more of a local effort. Now, another thing I want to talk about in a general, larger discussion here is going to be around the growing, the licensing fees for cannabis businesses are growing, right? First year, maybe 500, and then it goes to 1,000, and then 2,000, and then 7,000. You're seeing this in a lot of different areas. And even in Colorado, there was a specific article that I saw this month that came up about Durango, and their fees have been just climbing crazily in the city. And, it's half the fees of other cities that are pretty close by, neighboring sister cities. Now, last month we talked about Vista, the city of Vista, and what happened with them is that their fee went up 44 times in 1 year. 44x, not 44 individual times, but 44x. Okay, so what does that mean? Their licensing fee went from $640 a year annually all the way up to $28,000 a year. So that's a lot. That's a big change. Where are you going to come up with $27,000 new dollars to pay for this? Okay, and why did it go up? In Vista, they earmarked that money for essentially a mandatory audit because the city knows that there is tax money not being paid and compliance issues with these cannabis businesses. So it was voted on in the city council, I believe, and passed, but business owners are just getting kicked in the teeth having to pay these pretty large licensing fees. You're also seeing that in LA too. Was it maybe last year, I think in October, they said, hey, if you want to renew your license and be in the cannabis industry for another year, your license fee is now $20,000 per vertical. And we were, blindsided by this just as much as the operators were. It's a huge jump in fees. So the lesson from this fees thing here is to plan for your fees to double every year for the first 5 years. Now, if that doesn't happen, great. You can either earmark that for the next year or you have the gift of money, invest that into something else to make your dollars work for you. But don't expect fees to stay static. As much as the industry is up and down and like this kind of ever-changing landscape, you're going to see regulators change their minds on certain things, especially licensing fees and potentially mandatory audits. So look out for that. Now, let's talk about some tax stuff that came up this month. The main story is that the IRS has actually started to talk about cannabis businesses and put up a little website kind of clarifying their position on certain things. Now, we've made videos on pretty much every topic that was in that FAQ on the IRS website. So there's not really much new information out there, but there was one sentence that actually has started to really, cause a ruckus and make people think that 280E is dead. Okay. there was a sentence, and I'll read just the last sentence here, is the Internal Revenue Service takes the position that Section 280E affected taxpayers must calculate their cost of goods sold pursuant to the IRS Section 471 and the associated Treasury regulations. Now, some people jumped to think that, oh, this is about 471C from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. That means that if you make $25 million or less, you do not have to abide by 280E. Well, that is not what we think is going to be the case, okay? We made a whole video on this yesterday. You can look up our video on our YouTube channel about this, but essentially what happened is that 280E comes at one point. And there's another thing called UNICAP, 263A. It talks about inventories, and essentially it got kicked out and said, hey, since 263A came after 280E, you can't use it as a cannabis business. Well, this new Tax Cuts and Jobs Act 471C, about the $25 million or less, you don't have to abide by 280E. That came after 280E. It's likely that the IRS is not going to allow you to, just kick 280E to the curb. So don't let anybody, convince you that you can just, totally not look at this from the current perspective. If we always have been looking at this, 280E still does apply to you, whether you're legal or illegal. You have to pay taxes on money that you make legally or illegally. So make sure that you are paying attention and using a tax expert to give you guidance and not just some blog post from, a cannabis publication. So working with a professional is very, very important. Now, I can see something in here on the chat, and I 100% agree. Billy brought this up, and I think this is going to be Sharon from Denali here. We need to unionize, and most states are forcing, they're forcing you to unionize under the United Food and Commercial Food Workers Union in most states. Now, that's not every state. I'm sure every state's got their own, who you're unionizing with. But yes, if you want your voice heard, you need to get yourself together with a group of people that are willing to fight. Work with your industry associations and make your voices heard. The regulators are going to do, and they're going to, listen to who's ever the loudest. So when you start to bring the voices together, it's going to be lot louder, and they're going to hear you, and you're going to stand out. So Billy's been a grower for 5 years. It's tough, man. So thank you for sharing that unionization, prompt there. We have to unionize if you want your voices heard, because money talks, but when you collectively add your money together, now people are listening to you. All right. So another one here is kind of a little bit of a shocker. Okay. So California marijuana tax revenue is stalling in the wake of this pandemic and job losses. Now, as we talked about earlier, when we started this series on the kind of state of the industry, monthly conversation here, it was, about how cannabis is an essential business and it's blowing up and everybody wants to be, buying cannabis, and people were buying a lot of cannabis. These $1,200 stimulus checks, I'm sure a lot of it went into the cannabis industry. Now, what you're seeing is that Governor Gavin Newsom is saying that this is no normal year and that cannabis revenues are slowing down essentially. And whether it's in good times or bad times, tax revenues are a really good indicator on the consumer trends in the legal market. And with cannabis business operators keeping an eye on how the industry is going to actually react to this recession. We're very, very short. I think we're only 2 quarters, maybe 3 quarters. We'll tie up the third quarter today. Tomorrow we'll start the fourth quarter. But I think we're in our third quarter of the recession here. So really, really early. We've got a lot more for this to play out here. So we'll see how this plays out. But we talked about at the beginning, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, that cannabis is probably recession-proof. Now, what do we use to say that? It's pretty much looking at, did alcohol drop a lot, and did, tobacco drop during the, recession of 2008? And it didn't take a big hit. It actually took off, but people changed their spending habits, going from premium products to these budget products lower on the shelf. Now, when you look at the average alcohol and tobacco consumer versus the average cannabis consumer, it's likely that the cannabis consumer is going to be more hard hit by the recession because they're typically a younger consumer. So who knows? That may not be the case, but a lack of banking services for these cannabis businesses makes it harder to stay in business. It makes it harder to stay profitable if you always have to be running around paying 5 points on your money here and there. And there's a lot of issues with that. And the competition with the illicit market. When a recession, right, there's not really a big illicit market for tobacco or for alcohol. It's ubiquitously available everywhere at a very good price. But with cannabis, the black market, the illicit market is available in pretty much everywhere, right? There was not a legal market in every state. Now there is in a lot of states. At any rate, what I'm getting at is that we don't know, we can't quantify yet how much the illicit market is going to tack and punk into the legal market and potentially eat away at all of the profits or even just the top line revenue of the legal market. So keep your eye on that. The tax revenue in California was growing parabolically. It's going, pretty wild. The 12, 15% quarter over quarter. It only grew 2.5% from Q1 to Q2, I think. And that's not that good. That's a pretty big slowdown. So we'll see how Q3 wraps up. We'll talk about that pretty much probably in October, I'm guessing, if they have the numbers out for us to look at. But keep your eye on that. It's a pretty good indication of what's coming up, that you may, as a legal operator, be hitting even more friction. Now, another update on California cannabis taxes. Assembly Bill 1872 passed, essentially giving a standstill on cannabis business excise taxes and cultivation taxes on the state level. This does not stop, and this is going through all the way 2021, but this does not stop anybody from, in the city's level, raising your taxes. But the state level excise tax, cultivation tax should be at a standstill for the next 12 to 15 months. So let's hop in here on the comments here. Billy, yeah, let me see here. He's got a lot of comments in here. Yeah, making sure that you get a good salary. Sharon's adding in here from Denali, and there's a lot of things to look at. It's going to be big companies taking advantage of little companies, and that's just kind of what you're going to see. Money is becoming incredibly powerful. We're going to talk about that in the legal updates in just a moment here. One last tax thing, and it's going to just bring home a point. Paying your taxes on time. Santa Barbara County brought in $5.5 million in tax revenues, okay, in Q3, which is going to be our Q1, normal Q1. I believe their quarters are too adjusted. At any rate, the subsequent quarter, the previous quarter, they brought in only $1.9 million. They went from 1.9 to 5.5, so a 2.5x growth. Now, what you need to understand is the really important part. 1.1 of that $5.5 million, so 20% of it, actually came from late fees from the previous quarter. So if you're not paying your taxes on time, you're just giving up money freely to the government. Pay your taxes on time. There's no excuse to not pay your taxes on time. You are absolutely insane if you're going to pay a 20% or even up to 50% penalty on your excise tax. What the hell are you thinking, right? Pay your taxes on time. So that is the big thing here. Make sure you're paying your taxes on time and earmark that money so you have the money to pay on time, okay? That's all for the tax updates. There's a lot going on there. So at any rate, the next one, legal updates. And this is the one I want to talk about where money is kind of talking, okay? So there's a Los Angeles suburb out there, the City of Commerce, okay? And what happened with the City of Commerce is that a lobbyist is allegedly working with city officials in Commerce, and they were getting or soliciting kickbacks in exchange for obtaining a cannabis business license. And that's according to a new lawsuit. So From the Earth, which is a cannabis business or potential cannabis business, they applied in the City of Commerce, and their bid was rejected. They did not get a license. And the suit that they filed claims that a lobbyist threatened to pretty much kill their business application if that lobbyist didn't receive a $50,000 payment, a 10% stake in the business, and a $2,500 monthly payment ongoing. It was insane. We've heard about this actually from some of our clients that applied in the City of Commerce. We've been talking about this for over a year internally, and this guy or gal or team or whoever the hell they are got caught finally. Now, the group From the Earth is asking for $400,000 in the lawsuit, and they may win it. But one thing to note is that the FBI is looking into all of these claims of corruption. So if you know of corruption, credible corruption, reach out to the FBI. Just Google FBI cannabis corruption. I'm sure you'll get a link and you can fill out a form. Fill that out. It's important that you make these bad actors, air them out. These people are the ones that are screwing up. I almost slipped there, but almost really, they're screwing up the industry pretty bad and giving it a bad name. So, make sure you look in to see these things. This is real life. This is happening everywhere. Now, another lawsuit that's affecting Los Angeles, and will affect other markets, because we're seeing this in other places, right? You heard about the Illinois lawsuit. You've heard of other lawsuits in other states for other various reasons. So 3 companies filed a lawsuit over the amended regulations in the city of Los Angeles. So if you don't know, once the applications and the licenses kind of got approved, there's all this crazy stuff that happened with the September or October licenses last year, the process, which is a first come, first serve. Some people got access early to that application, and essentially, it just turned into a mess, and the right protocols were not followed. Lawsuit happened, and regulations got changed, but essentially what's happening right now is that the plaintiffs are saying that the residency requirements are pretty much unconstitutional. They want someone to say that it's unconstitutional. The new regulations are saying that there's going to be a double amount of social equity applicants, from 100 to 200 are going to be considered. But the new rules, the plaintiff is saying that the new rules are unfairly benefiting the plaintiffs of the previous lawsuit. So pretty much just appeasing the first lawsuit plaintiffs, and it's putting other social equity applicants in bad straits. So we'll see how that all shakes out. What the real lesson from this is that if a city says a licensing process is going to take 12 months, plan for it to take 24 to 36 months. What does that mean? That means you're going to have a big ass war chest of money so that you can pay your rent, pay your legal fees, pay anybody else that you need for ongoing support throughout this. There are people being caught as collateral damage inside of these lawsuits that, hey, they're going to get a license and they did everything the right way and whatever, they're fine with that they're going to get a license, but they may not be fine with paying $10,000 a month in additional rent for 18 months that they cannot operate in. So big lesson is prepare for lawsuits going forward, whether it's big companies suing states and putting pressure on them to allow bigger companies in and not favoring local residents, or is going to be, residents, or it's going to be particular application holders who did not get approved or did not get into their lottery or did not get a license. This will be happening more and more often. So that's just something to see there. All right, now we're looking at some questions here. Cattle growers need to get, regulations are pretty bad in California in many, many ways, right? If you're part of some of the Facebook groups or the LinkedIn groups, not many people were happy with going from the medical market to the regulated adult use market. There's been a lot of people left behind, especially the legacy players or the grandfathers and grandmothers of the industry really got, pushed out regulatory wise. And that's not the greatest thing. It's not how we create a fruit-bearing industry here, right? You need to have an all-encompassing industry. And, to the regulators, to their credit, they're doing, I would assume, and I will hopefully say they're doing the best job that they can. So we'll see how that all shakes out. California is got a lot of things they need to work out here. Denali Accountants says a thief is usually from the staff. Yes, 100%. A lot of the stuff is internal issues. You're going to see a lot of internal theft, is going to be the major diversion of cash, especially in a retail situation when a cash-heavy industry. It's easy for money to, $100 doesn't seem like a lot, but every day it's $3,000 a month, and 1 or 2 employees are doing this, whether they're bud tenders or they're managers. That is a material thing that you need to watch out for. And if you're not keeping cash logs, this is going to become your problem. And an auditor is going to say, well, where the hell is this $6,000? Why did you not account for that in your cash log? Why is that not, where's the discrepancy report? So be very thoughtful on that. All right. Just a quick one. I'm not going to hit it hard. Look at the new hemp industry rules. The hemp industry has pretty much filed a lawsuit against the DEA about the interim rules. There's some kind of public commentary going on right now. We'll see how that all shakes out. Pretty much saying that the hemp industry, if they go, one of the rules that's kind of sticking out like a sore thumb is that if the hemp industry processes any hemp at all, if they make it into oil, they are now in violation of the Controlled Substances Act, because the concentration will be higher than 0.3% THC, because they're pulling out all the plant matter, they're pulling out a lot of the water. That will now create a higher concentration of THC, which would then make that product illegal and it would have to be immediately destroyed. That's not good. I think this will be worked out. It's just in the middle right now. It's exploring and showing that the DEA implemented a rule without following the proper rulemaking procedures of providing the public with notice to actually get the comments done for this. So the petitioners believe that this legal action is necessary to protect the lawful U.S. hemp industry from the 2018 Farm Bill. So we'll see how that all goes. Billy subbed. Great. Thank you for subscribing. I appreciate it. Now let's talk about the last few things here, finance and M&A. So just a lot of big mergers and acquisitions. September is typically a slower financial month in almost all markets. It's usually the lowest growth month. People coming back from, their summer vacations, things of that nature, kind of getting reacquainted. VCs come back from the Hamptons or wherever they've been at, vacationing, things of that nature. So at any rate, Curalead, they rise to the top of the U.S. cannabis industry footprint with now covering almost 24 states. So they made some pretty big acquisitions. The notable one is that they bought out Grassroots, which allowed them to go from 18 states to 23 states and operating 88 dispensaries, or retail outlets. So Curalead is crushing it. They are just throwing, and they spent $1 billion on since February doing M&A. So this is massive. These are some really big groups here, multi-state operators that are crushing it for a variety of reasons. They're doing very, very well. But it's showing off that if you have money, you are going to really, really win. But it also shows that if you have a good footprint and great SOPs and a great business as a small operator in a niche state, for example, how Montana is saying, hey, nobody out of state is going to be able to be in this industry. Well, you could see a group like Curalead come in and, do some type of creative deal that keeps them compliant, but buy out one of the big multi-unit operators in the state of Montana. So it's not saying just that the big guys and big gals get to play the game. Who are they buying up? They're not always buying up these big groups. They also are starting to buy up smaller groups. And if the biggest top dogs are not buying you out, those mid-cap groups can buy the smaller ones who then create a roll-up, is what we call this, a roll-up, where they create economies of scale, they plus up the financials over 18 months, and then they sell up and sell out to the bigger groups. So don't get discouraged when you see some group got bought out by $75 million or $180 million. This is a great thing for the industry. That means more money is pouring into the industry and things have to trickle up. What's great about this is that it's a local-based business, cannabis is, and things trickle up. You may get bought out by your competitor. So kind of a tip from this is when you enter into the industry, think about your exit plan, right? You're going to have a plan and everything's going to change, but know what you want to do with this industry. Do you want to be in this for life? Do you want to be in it to make a certain amount of money? Do you want to be in it for a certain amount of time and see how much you can get done in 5 years or in 8 years or in 36 months? Having a thoughtful exit plan is critical when you are building up your business because it may make you make different decisions with how you spend your money, right? If your goal is to get out in 36 months, you may take on a certain amount of capital to invest heavily and gain market share quickly so you can crush your competition and essentially force them to buy you out if they want to stick around. So lots of different things there. Okay. Another finance one here kind of related to the latest COVID relief package that potentially comes out. Democrats have pushed a bill through. It includes marijuana banking provisions in there. They've done this a couple of times here. I wouldn't really expect this to make it all the way through. I think it's more of just a tip of the hat by Democrats in the House and anybody else that's supportive of this. I don't want to say it's just one side. I don't know specifically if there are any Republicans involved in this. I'm sure there are. But at any rate, this is coming down to such that don't expect this to pass. This is going to be coming up as, why are we talking about cannabis? People in the Senate are going to say, why are we talking about cannabis? We need to be talking about the citizens, not some, edge industry. Just because our lives, my life included, and your life, if you're an operator, is, solely revolved around this sun called cannabis, called the industry here. Just because we love it and we're in it every day doesn't mean anyone else gives a damn about this industry. So don't think that any government is going to come help you out. No institution is going to come help us out. It's going to be a long battle. And I would not expect the Safe Banking Act to pass in the next COVID relief bill, but it's on the slate. We'll see how it shakes out. I could be wrong. I would love to be wrong on this. All right. Now, another one here is that lots of money pouring into the tech startups of the cannabis industry. So lots of money being raised in there. So you may be saying, all right, well, I want to be in the cannabis industry. I want to grow cannabis. I want to start a new brand. I want to be the next cookies or the next blah, 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 or whatever the hell you want to be. Always being a plant-touching company does not necessarily mean that you have to be, being in cannabis does not mean you have to be a plant-touching company, right? There will be opportunities to start another cannabis cultivation somewhere down the line, right? Look at something like Casamigos Tequila. It came up and became $1 billion company 80 or 90 years after the re-legalization of alcohol. So what that says to me is that there's no need to rush into becoming a plant-touching business. You could get into tech that helps you lever up into the industry, helps you get your toe into the industry, meet people, solve problems, make a good exit, and then go up and buy some fledgling plant-touching businesses. So, maybe you're not the best cultivator, or maybe you are, but can you solve a problem with technology? It could be a small little chip or this or that or whatever it is. You don't always have to be in the plant-touching business. Other thing you can do is start a consulting service and help other businesses in your local market, right? We got a podcast coming up. We've already recorded 4 episodes, and one of the episodes talks about a woman in Humboldt, and she talks about how you should start an industry association within your city and how she did that and how this is a great thing for you to do. So don't worry about, becoming a plant-touching business. How can you move your local industry forward here? All right, so now another one here. We've got nationwide sales of adult use cannabis are eclipsing medical cannabis by a long shot. And this is obvious. There's barriers to entry into the medical market. You got to have a card. You got to have a certain illness sometimes, and it's not easy to get access to these things here. So medical markets from 2012 to 2018 doubled from 18 to 37, whereas recreational markets went up 600% from 2 to 12. So it's obvious that recreational sales are going to be outpacing medical sales. So, this is really big stuff here. You really, really have to be thoughtful on, what are you going to do when your state opens up medical, right? Usually, let me step back. Medical is not dead, okay? Medical is usually the first step in to cannabis for states. And then as a medical provider, usually you get some preferential treatment in the recreational licensing process. And what you'll notice is that the process, so there's like point 1, that's going to be legalization, voted on it. Then you're going to see a medical market open, and then you're going to see a recreational market open, okay? So this distance here is shortening up, and especially this distance from medical to recreational is shortening up significantly because the cities and the states are seeing the potential tax revenue, and they're like, all right, let's turn this on, and boom, they just go right into it, okay? So get into the medical if you can. This is not saying medical's dead. It will always be around. The person I'm interviewing today for our podcast is pretty much the biggest, proponent, one of the biggest proponents of medical, and they are a medical-only business, and they're in 10 states, and they're doing pretty damn well. So it's not saying medical is dead. It's just there's some little, nuances to why recreational is taking off more. Pretty much there's a lot less friction in it. All right. A question here from Martin. He's asking, can someone answer my question? Do delivery services have to get permits through city, or is it just states? Because I live in California and delivery services is legal throughout the entire state. Great question. So with California, there's a lawsuit going on. Let me get to that. I'll get to that in a moment. But with California, you can be licensed in one city as a delivery service, and you can deliver to the entire city, or sorry, the entire state. So get licensed in somewhere like Adelanto and then deliver throughout everywhere else. The thing is that you can't just carry a ton of cannabis in your car and then say, okay, someone orders. You can't bag it up in the car. You can't do that stuff. You have to go back to the warehouse or the retailer where your license is at to pick up every order, I believe. So it's very, very thoughtful to, know what your kind of delivery route is going to be, or have a lot of drivers, okay? Now, the lawsuit I brought up, certain cities are saying that, hey, the state should allow cities to decide whether they want commercial cannabis activity in their city or not. So we'll see how that shakes out. I think the states will win. The state will win, I believe, saying that it should be everywhere because it's creating cannabis deserts. When you can't deliver cannabis into somewhere, someone may be 100 miles from the nearest cannabis dispensary, whereas someone would be willing to drive and drop that off for them. So we'll see how that shakes out. So hopefully that answered your question there. You can deliver to the entire state as a business in the state of California. Last ones here. Let's just look at anything. I want to blow through these things here and get to some of the questions. The first of its kind ETF is out here, solely focusing on the U.S. cannabis industry. So Advisor Shares, an investment firm, they launched their U.S.-based ETF on the New York Stock Exchange on September 2nd. It opened around $25 a share, and it's sitting around $22. Its low was about $20.50 or $20.45. So simply put, ETFs are just types of investable securities that track a basket of stocks. So you don't have to go bet on this individual one and this individual one. They create a basket of stocks for you to invest in. So look at it. It may be something you want to get a little bit of exposure to the cannabis industry as a retail investor. That is one option there. All right. Other big acquisitions, Columbia Care bought out, I forget who they bought out. I think it was in San Francisco. They bought 4 dispensaries and a cultivation. It's in California. I think it's called Project Cannabis, I believe is what it was Project Cannabis. So $69 million spent on that. It's not a huge business, but it got purchased. And then TrueLeaf, they spent $66 million on 2 Pennsylvania medical cannabis farms. And that's pretty much the finance news and M&A news. So let me hit on this one last thing here. A few things. Tech. People skip the tech stuff. We're going to skip that stuff at any rate. Few things here. The fires. We made a video on that. Make sure you check our YouTube channel about the fires. There's been, just crazy stuff happening up in the Northwest, in California. It's affecting a lot of people, and pretty much, you're going to see this affect the entire industry. This is not just a West Coast problem here. This is an entire cannabis industry problem. This is something nobody wants to talk about. It's a thing that a lot of people turn a blind eye to, but a lot of the cannabis that comes from Colorado, Oregon, and California makes its way east into states like Michigan, Illinois, New York, Florida, and every other state, right? It's not, this is not how would you say, like a hush-hush thing. Like people see this all the time. You drop the cannabis off at a warehouse and it just disappears in a 52-footer out to the Midwest. So why am I bringing this up? That cannabis that's being grown in California and other states, it's probably going to be contaminated. There's going to be a lot of cannabis that gets contaminated. Okay, so what does that mean? These burning buildings and building materials, those have chemicals in them, and the ash and that smoke is running into the groundwater. It's running onto the plants, and these plants may not pass COA. So illegal operators that are selling in illegal shops, they don't give a damn. They'll sell whatever. As long as it smells good and it looks good, they'll smell it. But as a legal operator, you're going to start to see probably a spike in prices. Usually around this time during Croptober, when we're harvesting all this outdoor cannabis, prices typically depress a little bit because of a high volume of cannabis. But when we bring that down, so everything's going to rise. I believe everything's going to rise, but it will not rise as much in the illegal market as it will in the legal market. So let's keep an eye on that. Federal aid is not currently available for these farms and these businesses that are burning down. So it will affect the entire industry, and we won't know to the magnitude until we get to that point. All right, just some kind of thoughts on, let's see, the last thing I want to bring up here. That's pretty much it. There's some more stories here, but kind of nothing we haven't talked about already. So again, that's the news. That's the emerging trends. Now we're going to get into some of the questions. So if you have questions, drop them into the chat on YouTube, Facebook. We'll go ahead and get into those questions here. Let me just pull up one real quick second here about another channel to make sure that I'm answering all the questions that are necessary, that are going on here. All right. All right, so Martin's got another question here. And he asks, when you're buying cannabis for your dispensary, do you have to buy from a branded company and have to state from who and which you got your product from to the government? So when you are buying cannabis as a licensed operator in the state of California, you're going to have to buy product that is already in Metric. So Metric is just the track and trace software. So the government already knows how much cannabis is, or estimated how much cannabis is in the market at any given time. So you're going to have to buy from a company that can, a distributor that can sell you bulk cannabis. You can break it down and brand it yourself and do that, like light manufacturing essentially. Buy it at a pound, break it down into eighths, and now you've got your cannabis there. You can buy pre-packaged cannabis. That's another option. It's really up to you, but as long as you're buying from a licensed distributor, that's what you have to do. So hopefully that answers your question, Martin. Very, very important to keep yourself compliant. And again, this is not legal advice, but get someone who is compliance focused within your business. It's keeping you on the up and up. If it's not going to be yourself, make sure you get somebody else to stay tuned on all those different updates. All right. So drop more questions in there. I've got only 2 or 3 seeded questions from previous people that have emailed me that I wanted to bring up some of these answers here. But yeah. Okay. So Billy brings up, all right, let me just jump back into one other thing. So where do you find, compliant cannabis as a retailer? So one of the ones I kind of skipped over here was in tech, is that James Z, he's the co-founder of Leaf Trade. And there are many of these applications out there. But what had happened is that he created a software platform that 600 dispensaries throughout the entire country are using, and it helps them as a wholesale be able to buy cannabis in a transparent manner, right? The number one question that retailers ask each other, well, not number one, but one of the main questions they ask is, how much are you paying for top shelf grade A cannabis per pound, right? There's a lot of not transparency through all this stuff. So when you get onto a live market like Leaf Trade, you're able to see what other people in your area are paying, and it makes it more transparent. So check out Leaf Trade. This is not an endorsement for them. I have not checked the platform out, but it could be an option for retailers that want to save money on their cannabis purchases at a wholesale level here, right? And get in with distributors, learn from distributors. Hey, who's got the best here? You have to make these relationships. Cannabis is a team sport, okay? Don't forget that. So drop more questions in. Keep dropping questions in here. Keep dropping questions in. But I'll answer one here from Andrew, who submitted something earlier this month that I wanted to talk about. Caden dropped in here. And he asked, is it better to rent a property or buy a property for cannabis business? And does this change depending on your exit strategy? Fantastic question. So if you don't know, in most cities, you have to either have some type of claim to a property that you're going to be licensed in. It could be a lease. It could be a deed to the property. It could be some kind of letter of intent or a bonding agreement between you and the lease. The lessor that's going to be giving you the space. It says, hey, contingent that I get a license, I'll be taking on this space. You need to have that when you go for an application in most states. If not in the beginning, in subsequent rounds, you will need to have this. Now, the thing is, okay, do we shell out rent every month? And rent is just essentially burning money because you're not going to get any of that back. You're building up no equity. Or do you buy a building that you can license for your cannabis business? Now, there's a lot of things to think about here. And it can be, the cash outlay is going to be dependent on a lot of different things, okay? Now, let me see the question here. Okay, actually, so when you look at buying a space, right, there is sometimes going to be cannabis business is not going to do well. You're just going to just flounder and not do all that well, okay? And so when you buy the space, there's potentially an opportunity for an additional use outside of that, especially dependent on where your dispensary is at. You can turn it, if you're locked into a 5-year lease and 2 years in, your cannabis business goes belly up. Great. Now you can potentially turn it into a new business, potentially renegotiate lease terms because that, lease is significantly higher for a cannabis business. Can you negotiate better lease terms, stay with the lease, and then, open up another business? But when you look at buying a real estate for your cannabis business, the cash outlay is typically going to be higher. You're going to have a down payment and you're going to have to service the loan constantly, okay? But you have a way to exit and potentially recapture back all that money that you put into it. So this is also a thoughtful thing to think about. What is your exit strategy here? Because if you're going to if your goal is to be bought out, not everybody is going to be looking at, buying people that have only lease agreements in. Because if you have a lease agreement that does not have extensions tacked onto it, an extension is essentially you have the right to renew your lease on 2 or 3 or 5 year terms, maybe 1 or 2 more times. So if you don't have something like that, your business is pretty much up in question because you can't move the business very easily in most states. But when you buy a space, you become, an acquisition target who can then come in and buy that. They know that business can stay there essentially forever as long as the regulations are good. So it's another asset on your balance sheet, something to think about. And also another thing to think about when you buy a building and you build it up over time, say you get into an issue where you need more cash for your cannabis business. What you can do is a sale leaseback, essentially having someone buy your building off of you and then give you a 99-year lease on that building or whatever, some very, very long lease. So you know that there's the long-term legs of the lease there for you. You get the money from the sale to dump back into the business and you have a fair market lease. And so you can stay in the space and have more money for your war chest. So it really depends on a lot of different factors, buying versus renting your space. It depends on your budget. It depends on your risk tolerance. It depends on your exit strategy. It depends on a lot of different things. Also, it depends on, are you buying a building that's just a piece of junk and then to bring it up to compliance is going to cost so much more. Usually when you rent a space, you're given a vanilla box. And if not, you're given a budget for tenant improvements. And, it all depends on the deal that you're looking at. So if you have any questions about that, you need an analysis for this, reach out to us. We can do, a thoughtful pro forma on, hey, if we do it with rental plus so much TIs, here's what we're going to get. Here's what the cash flow is going to be. And here's what your balance sheet's going to look like versus when you have something like, a buy and then this type of improvements and then this is how it affects your assets and then blah, blah, blah. Here's how it changes your valuation. These are all things that we can help you out with. So please reach out to us if you need help with making that rent or buy decision for your cannabis business. All right. Drop more questions in here. Yeah, Billy says, hey, they triple the rent when they hear it's cannabis. There's this thing called the marijuana markup. A lot of businesses and services, leases, they are going to all be a lot more expensive when it gets to the point of they hear that it's cannabis related. So you're going to have to tell them at some point. You can't hide it because in the lease, it probably says, are you doing anything federally illegal? If you are, we're going to kick you out. So hopefully that's not the case for your space. All right. Keep dropping more questions in here. I'm going to go hop into the next seeded question that came from Andrew here. And Andrew asks, he says that we were incredibly surprised by our tax bill this year because we didn't know how many expenses were going to be kicked out and not used to deduct from our revenue. So what type of tax planning steps can we take to mitigate a surprise next year? Amazing question. I'll preface this question with one thing. Tax deadlines for extensions for C Corps, single member LLCs, and personal income taxes are due in 2 weeks, October 15th. So if you haven't, reach out to us. We can help you out with getting your taxes in order for 2019. But you have one more quarter coming up for 2020, and you can only, do so much financial engineering during that year to make sure you come out better at the end of the year. So tax planning is paramount. I'm going to release a video tomorrow that I did with Natalie, who was on our team, about tax planning, but I'll cover 2 main points about this. Okay. First is work with an experienced professional who knows about the cannabis industry. We've seen a fair amount of new clients this year that have come to us from having a local general gas and oil CPA, or there's a CPA that maybe is a friend they went to college with and they trust them because they have an MBA. Well, it's just because they're smart doesn't mean that they have the firsthand experience in the industry of knowing how to reasonably allocate indirect expenses into COGS. There are ways to do this, and it's legal and it's been proven by tax court law and cases and things of that nature. So you have to work with someone who knows specifically about your industry. Now, the second part I want to say about tax planning is that you never know exactly how it's going to shake out until you calculate it. but you really, really, really have to know that you're going to have to save money every month. Every transaction you make, you should be putting money away daily, especially if you're a retailer. You know how much taxes you collected that day. It's on the POS printout or it's on the report. Put that money away. Do not use your tax money as operating capital. Because if you get caught, with a tax bill for 400 grand, right? That sounds like a lot of money, but we've seen a lot bigger bills than that. This is a small operator paying $400,000. Where the hell are you going to come up with that money in 2 weeks? Okay, you can start structuring payment plans and things of that nature, but then this is a whole back and forth and Just put the money away. Don't use that money as operating capital and pay your taxes on time. That's what I brought up with that Santa Barbara County stuff. They collected $1 million just from fees and penalties. So they're happy. The government is more than happy for you not to pay your bills on time because you're then legally obligated to pay penalties and interest and fines. So be really, really thoughtful on allocating money every day for your cannabis business taxes. All right, the question here is, how hard is it to actually get financing? Great question. It's an amazing question. So financing for the cannabis industry has kind of slowed down a little bit. And it can make an argument that it's actually picked up pace from things that I've just told you from our thing here, from our industry update. But when you look at kind of the Canadian market, for example, it totally just, died pretty much. It's like a 90% drawdown over the past 12 months. And that's kind of scared big investors because they realize, hey, this industry is not just going to go and take off like a rocket ship. It's going to take off like an airplane. It's going to slowly have to climb to altitude. It cannot go straight up like a rocket. It needs to slowly climb to altitude here. So what you're seeing is that investors are being more strategic on where they're placing their money at. So you see cannabis tech is like booming right now. I brought that up earlier. Cannabis tech, there's lots of money pouring into that because what happens with cannabis tech is that when you buy a technology company, say you buy a POS provider, now you have firsthand data on who are the great acquisition targets for your next fund, right? Say, for example, someone buys a person or a software company that has 800 clients, okay? Now they have 800 acquisition targets. They know how much this group is making, and they know what their taxes are. If they assume certain kind of standstill and flow through of the cash, they know what this business is pretty much worth. And they can just, reach out and say, hey, would you like to be acquired for ABC amount of money? So there's lots of different things on why tech is booming. Okay, that's one reason. You're also seeing a different type of money come into cannabis. So SPACs, special purpose acquisition corporations, or companies are buying up. No, they're not buying up. Let me step back. What are SPACs? SPACs are just big funds that go and they say, all right, we're going to go put in $250 million into this company. It's going public. It's a public company. And it can sit there for like 18 to 24 months. And so what these groups do is they go and have to spend 80% of their money on one company. So they got to buy big companies to start out. Then they can just start buying up all these little ones. So special purpose acquisition corporations are allowing these cannabis companies to, once they're bought by the SPAC, they can then go public in the States. So that's why you're seeing a lot of technology investments as well, because you can't list a dispensary in the U.S. You can list them if they don't have a U.S. footprint, I believe. You can list Canadian companies in America that have no U.S. footprint, but not U.S.-based companies. I think that's the case. You can fact check that. I don't really care either way. I just know that there's some stupid nuances to why you can't list it in there. And also, it's illegal federally. You cannot be in a federally regulated exchange with a federally legal product, right? You don't see, that stuff on this exchange like that. At any rate, another thing you're seeing of where to get financing, banks will not loan to you. Banks are not going to loan much. You're seeing some people getting loans for grow equipment and manufacturing equipment, but not for working capital. That's not really happening because there's just too high of risk for these banks. They don't want to have to do all the compliance paperwork just to loan you some point and get some points on the money. It's just not set up for that yet. It's not, how would you say? the risk reward is not there for them. The cost benefit ratio is not there for them. So that's why it's hard to find. Another one to look at here is going to be family offices. You're really seeing a lot of family offices. There's not good data on this. There may be somewhere that I just don't know about, but there is a fair amount of family offices that are jumping into cannabis. They want some exposure to the industry, and they're doing $1 million deals, $5 million deals. Right? They don't want to be an add-on investor. They want to be the lead and potentially the full-on investor. So if you know family offices, what are family offices? Family offices are pretty much very rich families that have a trust. They need to invest a certain amount of money every year. They know that it's going to go up, and they want a little bit of exposure to it. So that's one way to look into family offices. But one of the most important things you should look at is to make sure that you are doing as much self-funding as you can, because it'll make you more diligent about how you spend your money, right? If you're not willing to, and it's also a signal to investors that you're willing to risk everything for this business, right? Don't jump into cannabis because you think you can get rich quick. That's not how this industry works. You will be crushed by anybody that gives a shit more than you, because it shouldn't be about the money. If you're doing this for money, you're going to get crushed every day of the week by anybody else that's not doing it for the money. You have to do it for the love of the industry, because when the going gets tough, the person who loves the industry is going to wake up and, go back to fight. But the person who's doing it for the money, once they get their first tax bill, they're going to say, peace, I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go buy a convenience store. I'm going to go buy this or that, a better cash flowing business. Okay. So long roundabout way, how hard is it to get financing? It's incredibly hard to get financing now in the cannabis industry. That's why you should try to focus on as much internal founder financing as you can. Now, the next question here from Martin is, do delivery services need permits with the city if operating in a space within the city? You're going to need a state license and a city license in the state of California. I don't believe you need a license for every city you deliver to. I may be misspeaking on that. You'll have to speak with your legal advisor on that. So that's the answer to that question. I really don't know enough to make a thoughtful recommendation on that. All right. Now, let's see here. Wish there was a delivery service only guide. I made my own with little bits of information on the web, and cannabis info is very limited. So just kind of bringing up something here is that the industry is constantly changing, and there's hard to make, how would you say, just an all-in-one guide, because, just like for LA, right? We thought LA was going to be very straightforward, and 2 years later, it's like totally not even, there's no one who's even opened yet. So because of so many changes, there's no kind of guide that sits there, right? And also, there's no way to be a 100%, know everything subject matter expert, right? You can have frameworks on how you digest certain things and look and understand certain things, but anybody that tells you they know everything about a certain aspect of the industry is full of shit. And that's real. Okay, that's real life. There's no such thing as knowing everything, because new things are happening every day. There may be people that are closer to the heat and closer to the pulse and can give you thoughtful guidance, but there's no way that someone can know the entire country's guidelines all the time, right? How do you know what's going on in Oklahoma? There's crazy stuff going on with Oklahoma, between Oklahoma marijuana or medical marijuana authority and the tribes. There's some really big stuff out there that nobody's talking about, right? There's a bunch of stuff going on that you can't know everything. So do your best, but pay someone within your local municipality or someone who's very familiar with it to stay on top of things and regulations for you once you commence that licensing process, for sure. Because once you're in for a penny, in for a pound, at some point you got to know when to cut bait. But it's going to be a long, expensive process, and you need the right advisors to give you thoughtful guidance when new things pop up here and new things pop up over here. All right. So what else we got going on here? Other than us, obviously, what are some of the best resources for cannabis industry information, understanding that it's fragmented? I have a few things that I look into. I like watching Tom Howard on Cannabis Legalization News. Cool dude. He's got Miggy on there, a few other team members on there that are helping produce their show. They've got good information, great people on there. staying up, set up a Google News alert and just stay with your local group. Or you can do it a local based thing. And, say, for example, it's the city of Warren, Michigan, and then cannabis, and then see what comes up for your local city and that's how you stay on the pulse. Another one, the basics, MJ Biz Daily, Marijuana Moment, Green Entrepreneur, all those little things. They're not little by any means. Some of them are pretty damn big. Staying up on those kind of things, those sites, that can be helpful. Googling and looking at news, just Google cannabis businesses and see what news pops up. Law 360, I've got a subscription to that. I really enjoy reading about the legal matters in cannabis. Law 360 is not cheap, I think. It's a pretty robust thing. It can get you in all the different things. I like reading about legal stuff. It's not the most fun things to read about, but it does give you insight to how things might shake out later. So Eden, hopefully that helps you out there. So if you're one of those channels, hey, there's your shout out. There is your shout out. All right, I've been at work, and then let's see here. Yeah, that's pretty much all the questions we've got in the chat. I'll stay around for a few more minutes. Drop some questions. It can be anything. Guys, we can talk about anything. Startup related, anything you want to talk about here. I'll stick around for a few more minutes. We've been on here for about an hour and 5 minutes. I love doing this. I could do this all day. I have to get off at 5. I have a podcast recording, but aside from that, drop some more questions in here. I can talk about some other articles, things I've kind of blew through. Let's see, what else did hey, there's, let me see here. Yeah, there's rumors coming up that Green Thumb and Curalead could be merging. That could be another big one for you. This is very early talks, kind of some rumors in the rumor mill. That could be a massive M&A activity there. What else did I blow through here? So I got a question here. Business plan. I need to write one. How important is it and how accurate do the numbers need to be? This is a super awesome question. It seems very basic. Let me see what other questions we've got here. Let me get to this first one and then I'll get to the business plan one. Okay, so John Wayne 420, I think you've been in our chat a few times here for the live streams. He asks, he or she asks, how do you feel about the market and licensing fees in the state of Michigan? Now, I'm not privy to the fees out here in Michigan. I if they're out there, I could probably look it up. Again, this is where the subject matter expert debate comes in. I don't know the fees, and I don't want to act like I know everything. But why I want to answer this question is that I just moved from Los Angeles back to my home state of Michigan. I lived in LA for over a decade and moved back to Michigan. And what I'm seeing here is that the industry is booming. There's a lot of cities coming online. There's a lot of things coming online here. I think this is one of the best markets to be in with so much open space, and the state is going to be in need of tax revenue for certain aspects or certain reasons. I think Michigan's going to be a great market, centrally located. You got Illinois right there. There's probably going to be some kind of, again, I brought up that Northeast cannabis pact that might happen. I see that same thing happening in the Midwest, kind of the tri-state area. I think it's going to be something that happens with Ohio, Indiana, or at least, Michigan, Ohio, and then Illinois over there. It's a ripe thing coming for the taking. So I think that Michigan's going to be one to keep an eye on. Now back to the business plan question. How important is a business plan and how accurate do the numbers need to be? How accurate the numbers need to be is a very important understanding, is that no one can predict the future. No one knows what the hell your business is going to do, but we have what we call reasonable inputs to kick out, some numbers that are going to come out later. And those inputs are what you need to really be thoughtful, and the reasons behind why you said, for example, a dispensary. Why is your average ticket $57? Why is your average frequency 2.8 times per month? Why do you think you're going to have this many customers? You have to look at your service area, how many this and that. When you show within your licensing application that you've done your due diligence to fully analyze your market, that's most important to these regulators. Do you know your local market and your local competition? And it's also important to investors to say, all right, do you know what the market is you're competing in? When you look at these, I've seen like a ton of business plans, at least 150 business plans, right? When you see this, okay, everyone has this hockey stick growth. First, year one's going to be a little bit. Then we hit year 3 and we're freaking rich. We're like making millions of dollars and we're crushing it over here. Sophisticated investors or anyone with half a brain is going to call you out on your shit. And they're going to say, okay, well, why? Tell me why this is going to be going like this. And if you don't have good reasons and good stories and good narratives behind your business, behind your thesis, you will not get investment. So that's why it's important to have reasonable build up behind the numbers of your pro formas in your business plan. Now, business plan has got, 12 to 18 sections of a business plan, depending on, how much you want to break it out. In a business plan, it's really focused on the team executing it, the amount of money needed, and your go-to market strategy. Those are some really big ones here. You need to have a differentiator of why you're special. Opening a cannabis dispensary or cannabis cultivation or manufacturer is not novel. No, it's great. You and every other person in the industry wants to open this up, but what makes you special? That's very important in demonstrating that you have the ability to understand your market and how you're going to stand out from your competition. That's why business plans are important, because once you get started in the business plan really doesn't mean much. It just shows that you understand the industry, the local industry. Trust me, operating in Florida is different than operating in California, than different in operating in Oklahoma, right? So you have to demonstrate your local knowledge base in your business plan, all right? Getting back on here. John, thank you very much for the compliment. I appreciate it. I'm glad you keep jumping in here for the streams. Strange asks here, is there any form of education I could attend to gain knowledge of managing a grow warehouse? Now, many cities have, I don't want to say many, it's not actually many. Very few cities, but a selected number of cities have these grants that are coming from states, right? And they have these education programs to kind of teach people and educate the workforce. So look into the grants that your cities may be offering. It's usually a local-based thing. But you know what I would do? If I was in your position about learning how to manage a grow, I would go and I would volunteer my time at a grow facility, or I would take a minimum wage job or whatever you can to go and work in the industry. Go and spend the time, learn the pains. You may go through this and realize, I actually do not want to be in cannabis at all, right? It may be terrible for you. Maybe you can say, I don't want to manage this. I want to do something else. So I would say go and work with somebody in the industry. Go and get that firsthand experience, because it'll help you in another way, is that investors will see that you didn't just attend a class and get some arbitrary certificate. You actually worked for free for 3 to 4 to 8 or 12 months, however much you can afford to work for free or for cheap. And you learn, everything in the business, and you can show and demonstrate your knowledge in the industry, right? It's a different conversation when you walk in and can speak the lingo and give nuanced, detailed answers instead of like, oh yeah, terpenes and, flavonoids and, THC number this and that. When you start talking about specific things that maybe this investor is a grower themselves, they're going to ask you detailed questions that need a nuanced answer. So that's mine out there. You can look at one called Green Flower. Look that up. It's Matt Simon, I think, is the guy who runs it. And I think it's just like one of the biggest education platforms in cannabis. Reach out to them. They may have a warehouse management program out there. I think it's Max Simon. Reach out to them. They can probably help you out with some kind of education as well. All right. John says, I'm in Colorado. I was going to sell my house and move there within 6 months, probably in the spring, deciding where to move in Michigan. I think everywhere is great in Michigan. I love every part of the state's got something beautiful to offer. But visit a fair amount of times before you make that big move. I only moved back here because I'm very familiar with the area and I had a place to move to right away anyways. But, looking to see, where you can move into. It's a big jump going from Colorado out to here. I mean, we both have winters, but things are a bit different, shall I say. And it says here, is a med badge required to volunteer? So there's going to be certain hiring regulation. There's a follow-up question to the warehouse one. There is different states will have different requirements for the people that work within the business. You may have to have a medical card as a worker in a medical business. I'm not sure of the specific states. So you may have to do that, but reach out to the grow facilities and say, hey, I'd love to, help you out. How can I volunteer, and see what their requirements are? It's going to be probably case dependent, and specific groups may also have their requirements such that they may say, we require that you actually be a patient and that you are, whatever. I don't know. They may require you to be a veteran. They may require you to be of a certain ethnicity. I don't think they can do that, actually. I think you cannot. Maybe they can. I don't know. What I'm saying is there may be requirements by the state and by the business. So reach out to these businesses to get information on which ones and what your requirements are to get into that facility. Just people echoing here kind of the experience. You work for 3 to 4 to 5 years in the industry to learn a lot of different things. I want to bring up kind of like a thing that I've talked about, in depth a few other places. I don't know if nobody sees every one of our videos, but don't believe the hype about this green rush. Don't let it create fear or FOMO, the fear of missing out, that this cannabis opportunity is going away. It's been here for 24 years. It's been legal for 24 years. So there's no need to get all agitated and worried that this opportunity is passing you up. Okay. It's been here for 20 some plus years. Don't just now think that because, it's getting more steam that the opportunity is running away from you. There's going to be a big run up of businesses, and there's going to be a lot of businesses that just totally crap out and die. And their businesses they can't manage it, right? It's not just the cannabis side. The financial aspects of running a business is very, very critical and important. It's not just making great cannabis. Lots of people can grow great cannabis, but not everybody can manage people, enforce, policies, enforce procedures, raise capital, deal with HR issues, put on the smiling face to go talk to regulators, go get a legal team and fight for this or that. There are so many aspects to running a legitimate business aside from just creating product. And you got marketing, and you've got other compliance and technology things you have to understand. And there's a lot going on there. So where was I going with that? Pretty much you just, you need to get in the industry. You really need to worry less about the FOMO of the green rush and get into the industry. Take your time. Don't rush into this. Rushing will create bad behavior patterns, and you'll do dumb shit and get yourself locked up in some bad deals potentially, or you'll do something that's not the best to be doing. So be thoughtful on that. It's a comment here. I see that they see a lot of very sloppy companies out there. They're sloppy, and at some point it will get caught up, and they will get caught into that. It's very, 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 very important to understand this industry. Eden brings up financial and operational talent is in short supply now that we are moving past this slick pitch deck. Look, it's really, 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 really hard to find good talent for one key reason, right? Green growth CPAs, we've been growing massively. We're hiring someone pretty much every 2 weeks right now. And it's really, really hard to find talent for this reason. If you're trying to bring people for us, the big 4 accounting firms, we're trying to bring people that have experience there. But the moment that these people leave these big accounting firms, these big law firms, these big compliance firms, or whatever they're in, they can never, ever, ever, ever go back to those firms. They are cutting off pretty much their ability to go back into any other big Fortune 500 company, because those companies will never touch anybody that's been in the cannabis industry, because you can't get clearance. You can't get certain things passed. They don't know about, you have questionable past. So candidate A, squeaky clean record, great, MBA, CPA, got everything, no cannabis experience. And then you got the second candidate, all the same qualifications, but they've been in the cannabis industry for 2 years. The big firms and the big Fortune 500 public companies are going to hire someone without cannabis experience, because it's just, why would they bring on this risk factor, this person here? Who knows what they did while they were in the cannabis industry? And this is not indicative to really what the cannabis industry is about, but it still has a stigma. It's hard to get people to jump from the legitimate other industries, aviation, oil and gas, commodities, CPG, all these other industries, and get them into cannabis. It's really tough. So Building a team is paramount to your success. Having co-founders, you cannot do this all alone. And if you say you can, you're probably one in a million. I did a podcast yesterday with a guy down in Oklahoma, and I cannot wait to release this. He was a CNC machinist, and now he's a solo entrepreneur doing a grow, pushing out between only 30 and 40 pounds a year, I believe. Or no, 30 pounds his first year. I think he's doubled or tripled since then. But it's an all-day, 12 hours, 15 hours a day job. So you need to be able to find and harvest good talent. So this kind of brings into the other point. Get into your local market, y'all. Go in there and meet people. Start an industry association for your city or for your county or for the southern part of your state. You could start the Southern Michigan or Lower Peninsula Cannabis Industry Association, or start the Macomb County Cannabis Industry Association. You can do that. No one's stopping you. There's no official thing. You can just start this out of nowhere, right? You can be the Women in Cannabis Association. You can do all this. This is how you can get into the industry without having to get a license. And you can build up that team to then go and crush it when you get a license. All right. Another one here from Aaron Howard. How do you have reps in or specialize in Sacramento area? Yes, we have reps in California, specifically in Sacramento. Not we're a remote team. We're remote first. We have an office in Oklahoma and one in LA. That's just to meet people that want to come into the office, but we do everything remotely. We scaled our business back. Scaled our business up by using technology. COVID has just accelerated that. And so we can give you guidance. We have, I think, over 180 clients, over 200 clients in California. So we're very, very well know the laws within California, especially Northern Cal. We have a lot of clients. I'd say over half of them are in Northern Cal because there's a lot of concentration up there of those businesses. So we can help you out. So please, Aaron, reach out to us via the website. Go to greengrowcpas.com. The top right corner, click on the Get Started button, fill out the form, and we can get back to you, set up a time to chat with our team. You can do that right away, right? When you go on our website, you can set up a time to chat right away. It's not like wishing and praying that someone will call you. If you set up a time, someone will give you a call. So go ahead and reach out to us. We've got a lot of experience in many different markets, especially California. All right, so we are hitting the hour and 20-minute mark here. If you don't have any further questions, I'm just going to wait maybe 1 or 2 more minutes. If you can squeak a last question in here. All right, Aaron said, do you have reps that specialize in the Sacramento area laws and regulations? A group of 6 of us who graduated a social equity program. We're putting out grants and loans. So yeah, hey, reach out to us. We'd love to learn more about the opportunity that you have there for yourself. If we can help you out with securing grants or loans for your business, or if, hey, we can get some of that grant money and then help educate the local market, we're down with that too. Whatever we can do to help out you. So this is to Aaron Howard and to anybody else watching this, whether you're on the live or the replay. We want to be one of your partners throughout the process in the cannabis industry and getting licensed and growing your business. So if you have opportunities that you need help with, reach out to us. We'll see how we can help you out. Again, visit our website. Cool. Visit our website, greengrowcpas.com, or give us a call at 800-674-9050. We can walk you through all the different things and the nuances of how we can help you out in your business. Social equity is a great program in many states and many cities. We'd love to be able to help to push those programs and bring those communities that have been disproportionately affected by the war on drugs to help them get their stake. Let's do this. Let's help out. So reach out to us with that. We can help you with the cannabis real estate. We can help you with licensing applications. We have a licensing arm now. We're taking that on an ad hoc basis. This is not something we're going to do for every market, but if you're set up in the right way, then, hey, we can probably help you out. It's not for everybody, but we love to be able to explore options. So please, anybody watching this, visit our website, check us out, fill out that Get Started form. There's buttons everywhere that say Get Started. Check them out, reach out to us, and we'll see how we can help you out. So I'm going to cut it here. It's been almost an hour and a half. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with everyone here watching on every platform. Thank you. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for watching. Tell a friend. get people to subscribe here. If you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. We have new videos coming out 3 to 5 every week going forward. We're going to do more content. I'm in my home studio now that I can really get things going faster at a higher rate here. So, and if you haven't, sign up for our email list. Actually, I don't even know where the signs up. I know it's on our website. If you scroll to the bottom of the page, something will pop up that says, hey, join other people. It'll be in the bottom left corner. Fill your email address out and get on our email list twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays. We might even start doing it more often. I know sometimes it can be annoying and we get unsubscribes, but hey, we're trying to provide value for y'all. So again, thank you very much for your time. Hopefully you've enjoyed yourself. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Have a great rest of your week. Have an amazing, amazing rest of your day. And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you very much for your time.